From the start of flight, captains have been trained to hold the expectation that maybe, just maybe, something will eventually force them to land in a way and at a position not of their choice in some small compartment of the aviator's toolbox. Here are the top 10 emergency plane landings. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more videos. Number 10. Navajo Safe. In the late afternoon of June 1993, a 45-year-old former RAF Tornado pilot, air taxi pilot Edward Wire, lifted off from Birmingham, England, on a journey to Norwich, about 130 miles to the east. There were 7 travelers on board, a load that made even a low-rent charter airliner seems roomy in his 8-seater Piper Navajo. Around 40 miles west of Norwich, as Wire steadily decreased his power to start his descent, there was a big boom. The aircraft shook like a gentle Labrador, and the 2 engines were silent. In reality, the correct engine went away, tore itself from its mount and fell off. One of its 3 prop blades had been shed, and the immense spinning imbalance tore the motor free. Coming down quickly, Wire discovered an empty area to his left and twisted towards it without reluctance. Even though power lines disrupted the entrance route, he managed to get it over the wires and bring the Navajo down so softly on its belly that a rider who later reported whiplash was the only injury. Number 9. Snapped wing spar. When training for the 1970 World Acrobatic Fly-Off, during a pull-off from a vertical drop, British champion Neil Williams felt the wing spar of his Slim 526 abruptly fail. Williams noticed that the left wing was folded at almost a 45-degree angle to the fuselage, severed at the base, but still somehow kept in place. As he immediately closed the throttle and attempted to level off, the wing flopped back into place when the airplane flicked rode upright in response to the unexpectedly askew spar. Williams now had another issue with the airplane on its back and the damaged wing actually maintaining a tenuous connection. The Slin engine died. RAF Hullawington, the airfield from which he had left, was closed now, and his ground crew had already caught crashed vehicles, so Williams decided to land there. He made a smooth landing, and he didn't injure anybody. Number 8. The Gimli Glider. When the Air Canada Flight 143 pilots experienced a deep bong in the cabin on July 23, 1983, also during simulated training incidents, it was an alarm bell that they had never heard before. No wonder. The sound implied that both engines were out of fuel. A condition unimaginable for the state-of-the-art Boeing 767-200, placidly en route from Montreal to Edmonton, Canada. That's the bad news here. The good news was that Captain Robert Pearson was a sailplane pilot, and he easily came up with what he felt was the best optimum distance glide speed of the 767 and turned to Winnipeg, which seemed to be within range. He eventually went to Gimli because it was closer, but it was also a drag strip. Pearson found he was just too high and pushed the big Boeing to lose altitude in a substantial, cross-controlled side slip. It was a practice he used in gliders, but in a 95-ton swept-wing plane, it was a sporty trick. While races scattered in every direction, and Pearson braked like a Corvette driver looking at a hairpin turn, the nose gear strut collapsed, and the 767's nose ground the plane to a halt, just shy of the carnage you would have created while rolling. Number 7. Piggyback ensigns. During World War II, on September 29, 1940, 2 identical ensigns collided in the sky over New South Wales, Australia. But not only did they smash, they did so gently enough, when flying at the same altitude in exactly the same direction, that they formed a massive 4-engine biplane, forever known as the Piggyback ensigns in Oz. Royal Australian Air Force aircraftman Leonard Fuller was slowly descending in his ensign Mark to cruise at a lower altitude. He pancaked on Markov Jack Hewson, who was flying level, unseen just below him. Hewson, shocked but survival-minded, firewalled his 2 throttles, secured a seatbelt with the yoke for level flight, crawled the broken side window of the cockpit, and parachuted free. Fuller, meanwhile, discovered that the tandem was actually capable of flying, as all his flight controls were unchanged and operable, and Hewson had left behind the 2 roaring, overboosted engines. The ensign duo sunk quickly, but Fuller too blocked his own right throttle as he approached a farm field and flared in ground impact, touching down so lightly. Yes, Hewson had even left his landing gear down for the flight, that the aircraft was only harmed by mid-air. Number 6. The show must go on. On the night of November 3, 1943, RAF Flight Lieutenant William Reed was the sole pilot of an Avro Lancaster, en route to Dusseldorf with a set of bombs. Reed took a rupture through his windshield from an enemy night fighter, barely halfway to the target, and just past the Dutch coast, and was hit in the shoulders and hands. His head raked by splints of sharp perspex. Reed was shot again, but in spite of a bullet through one shoulder, the flight engineer was able to carry him a portable O2 bottle. They were almost an hour away from the goal, but Reed managed to count Dusseldorf to death so precisely that the automatic strike camera would later reveal their bombs dead on the target. A fearless Reed, blood from his freshly opened head wounds obscuring his vision, was roused with USAAF base at Shipdam in sight to make the night landing between 2 rows of runway lights barely glimmering through ground fog. While the weakened legs of one main gear gave way, the Avro settled heavily but safely on Earth. Bill Reed was awarded the Victoria Cross for his airmanship, bravery, and devotion to service. Make sure to stay until the end of the video because these next landings will surprise you. Number 5. Into the rainforest. In the morning, the plane had departed from São Paulo and flew north much of the length of Brazil. Captain Cesar Garces looked at the printed flight plan and saw that 0270 was the route to Belgium. That meant for north-northeast heading of 027.0 degrees. Yet, Garces read it incomprehensibly as 270 degrees, due west, straight into one of Brazil's least inhabited regions, the northern Mato Grosso jungles. As there was no place to dump petrol, Garces flew on until he emptied the Boeing's fuel tanks and decided to land with the least possible chance of burning. Garces was unable to stretch more than a small amount of flaps, with hydraulic strength gradually dwindling. When the engines eventually came to a halt and could scarcely make out the horizon from a light of faraway fires. He had no cockpit lights and few working instruments, but he managed to flare the 737 as high as an 18-story building into the tops of rainforest trees. Its wings tore off as the Boeing found the ground, and it quickly slipped to a halt. There were 13 people who died, but 41 survived. Number 4. When throttles are only your flight control. Within a moment of the missile strike at 8,000 feet on the climb out, the A300, a DHL cargo flight, had completely lost all 3 of its hydraulic systems. It was also leaking fuel rapidly and on fire. A blaze which, it was predicted, was spread through the main spar of the left wing had the flight lasted only 8 minutes longer. Like First Officer Steve Michelson, Flight Engineer Michael Raphael played a big part in the save as well. From the wide left outward wing tank, fuel had flooded. The left inboard tank leaked easily. For the pilots to figure out their thrust vectoring abilities, it took just minutes or so, and they initiated an approach back to Baghdad. They touched down effectively this time, but the airplane rode off the runway into the dirt surrounding it. They started running from a scene when the A300 had stopped and the crew evacuated the cockpit, but they were stopped by crash crews. They were in the midst of an unpolluted minefield. Make sure to stay until the end of the video, because these last 3 will blow your mind. Number 3. One wing and a prayer. Israeli air pilot Zivi Nedivi was exercising air combat maneuverability over the Negev desert on May 1st, 1983, with his large twin-engine F-15D Eagle, dogfighting a tricky A-4 Skyhawk that played the role of aggressor. Unfortunately, as Nedivi descended from its height, the Skyhawk went inverted, and neither pilot could see the other. The resulting crash ripped off the whole right wing of the F-15. Through the afterburner doors, he pushed the power levers, and the speed relaxed to half an airplane so that he could actually control it. Approximately 20 feet from the edge of the 11,000-foot runway, Nedivi braked to a stop and twisted in his seat to shake the teacher's hand. It was the first moment he saw that the right wing had vanished. Nedivi was supposedly degraded for disobeying the order of his instructor to eject, and prompted immediately afterwards to save his flight, which was repaired and flew again 2 months later. Number 2. Fire up. Skilled acrobatic and film pilot JW. On an early spring Saturday in 1975, Korki Voronov was flying a Beat BD-5J, a lightweight single-seat microjet, to a NASA space shuttle subcontractors gathering in Washington, D.C., where the aircraft was to be seen. Voronov unexpectedly lost all oil pressure at 11,500 feet above North Carolina. Fortunately, about 800 feet above a dense pine forest, Voronov broke off the undercast, saw Interstate 950 miles to the west, and was able to land on the highway. He skimmed over a moving Mayflower van and considered landing atop it briefly because traffic was heavy, but ultimately decided against it. Voronov touched down softly, crested a rise, and rode towards an off-ramp on the other side. A Minimal and a Sunoco gas station were at the bottom of the exit, so Voronov used the last momentum of the beat to roll up to the pump island, triggering the little rubber ding-dong hose in the process. He plays in the film Octopussy, and in the beat, James Bond, played by Roger Moore, runs out of fuel, lands on a rural 2-lane, and rolls into a gas station, where he told the slack-jawed clerk to please fill her up. Number 1. Wing walks. Canadian Second Lieutenant Alan McLeod was only 18 years old when, during World War I, he was given the Victoria Cross for a brave crash landing he carried out while standing on his Armstrong Whitworth FK-8 single-engine bomber's wing. He steered the FK-8, licked by flames from its burning gas tank, wounded 5 times by attacking Fokker triplanes so that the fire flowed away from his also wounded rear gunner. He managed to crash land the aircraft close enough to British lines that he could crawl to safety, dragging along from his gunner. The wheezy quote from McLeod notes that he climbed out of his left bottom wing and steeply kept the flames to one side-by-side slipping, allowing the observer to continue firing until the ground was reached. And so the legend has come down to us. But pilots who hear it know that without the use of rudder control, a side slip is unlikely, which McLeod could not have reached from his position on top of the wing. Nonetheless, he made a safe touchdown and survived. Well, that wraps up today's video. Flight was never supposed to be easy, yet these guys proved it was, even in the toughest situation. Make sure to like,